G'day, my name's Miss Hobbs. Welcome to Miss Hobbs Teaches Biology. And today I'm going to be teaching you all about cells. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Miss Hobbs Teaches. If you don't know me, I am a high school science, STEM, agriculture and business teacher from Victoria, and all of my videos are Victorian curriculum aligned, and you can also find accompanying worksheets on my Teachers Pay Teachers, which are linked down below. Okay, let's get into the content for today. So, cells, they're the basic unit of life. Now, the first cell appeared on Earth around 3.6 billion years ago, which is a really long time, right? Now, when these first cells appeared, they actually appeared near our hydrothermal vents in the oceans, and they had to survive really extreme temperatures. Now, what you need to understand is that cells are the fundamental unit of life. Cells make up everything. They make up you and myself, they make up plants, they make up the trees. Cells make up everything. And cells are really cool, and they're really interesting, and I've got to say, I do love biology. So this episode will really get into our types of cells and some cellular functions. So as I said, cells are the building blocks of everything, and cells can either be multicellular or unicellular. Now, if we break down the word, we know that multi means many and uni means one, okay? So we're either saying that if something is a multicellular organism, that it has multiple cells which are making that up. But if something's unicellular, it's only going to have one, okay? Now, cells contain stuff inside of them, and the stuff that they contain inside are called organelles, okay? So a little bit like our organs inside of us, but they're called organelles. So very similar names, yeah? Now, the two key types of cells that we're going to be talking about are called prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. And the big difference between them is the presence of membrane-bound organelles. So in prokaryotic cells, we don't have membrane-bound organelles present. And when we're talking about membrane-bound, okay, picture this, okay? You've got a bowl of jelly, okay? Now your jelly is your membrane, okay? And inside that jelly, maybe you've got some little bits of jelly, some little fruit tingles, or like some little lollies. All of those are in there. Now, when they're in the jelly and the jelly's nice and set, they're not gonna move around, yeah? And we could think about that like our membrane-bound organelles. So they are more complex cells, and they contain this thing called the nucleus. But we're going to talk about this a little bit more. Let's start with our prokaryotic cells. Now, prokaryotic cells, they were the first type of cells to appear on Earth. So they've been around a really long time. Now, the word prokaryote comes from the meaning pro, meaning before, and karyot, meaning nut, kernel, or fruit stone, okay? So it actually means before the nut or kernel or fruit stone, which that nut, kernel, or fruit stone, that's the nucleus, okay? So the translation is before the nucleus, yeah? So prokaryotic cells, they existed before our eukaryotic cells, and they don't have a nucleus or these membrane-bound organelles. Now, when we are talking about these eukaryotic cells, they contain these membrane-bound organelles, and they also contain a nucleus. Now, just like we translated the term prokaryotic, we can translate the term eukaryotic, okay? And that basically means true and nucleus. Remember how we were talking about that before? Yeah? Now, most cells have what we call a cell membrane. Now, the cell membrane is the bit around the outside which encloses our cell together, and it is what we call partially permeable. So it means that some stuff can go in and some stuff can go out, but it's selective to choosing what it wants. But our cell membrane, it like helps to keep everything together, and some stuff can travel in and out. Now, inside the cell membrane, we have a special fluid called the cytosol. And the cytosol has these little things in there called ribosomes. And When we're talking about this fluid, so the cytosol and the ribosomes together, we call that the cytoplasm, okay? And that's like the jelly suspension, right? That everything is sitting in within your cell. Now, inside the ribosomes, which I mentioned before, we see small proteins produced, just like enzymes. And enzymes, they can help to speed up reactions, yeah? So within both our prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell, they both contain a plasma membrane, okay? That's what has that selective permeability, and it allows some stuff to go in and some stuff to go out, and it keeps a bit of structure to our cell. They all have, okay, the cell membrane. They all also have the cytosol, so that's the jelly-like fluid in the middle. They've all got that. All cells also contain chromosomes. Now, chromosomes, they carry the genetic information of the cell. Now, the genetic information that chromosomes carry is in the form of DNA. Now, you might have heard of DNA before, you know, on forensic files when they're doing a DNA test and whatnot. Well, DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. It's a little bit of a hard one to say. And DNA carries the genetic information within the chromosome. And the other thing which makes these similar is that all cells have ribosomes. And like we were saying before, the ribosomes, right, they're responsible for protein production, just like making things like enzymes. Now, remember how we were saying that our eukaryotic cells, they have membrane-bound organelles and a nucleus, yeah? Well, the nucleus in the eukaryotic cell is where that genetic information, so the DNA, that's where that's all held. And whilst the genetic information is still present, okay, there's still genetic information in our prokaryotic cell because it has to be able to say like, yeah, divide, yeah, do these different things, like have functions, okay? That's what that's telling the cell to do. It doesn't have it in a nucleus, and it doesn't have the organelles to be membrane bound, okay? Now, we actually have two different types of eukaryotic cells, okay? And the first is plant cells and the second is animal cells. And as you can probably guess, plant cells make up plants and animal cells make up things like you and me, okay? Now, the really big difference between a plant and an animal cell is that a plant cell has a cell wall, okay? Now, a cell wall provides structure and rigidity. The other thing our plant cell has is a vacuole. Now, I like to think of a vacuole as a bit like a vacuum bag. You know when your mum's gonna put up the linen into storage or whatnot, and she gets a vacuum seal bag and she'll seal it shut and whatnot? Yeah, well, that's like a vacuole. A vacuole it's like a vacuum bag. It's a place to store, and it takes up quite a lot of our plant cell. Now, the other thing our plant cells have are these things called chloroplasts. Now, chloroplasts, they produce what we call chlorophyll, and chlorophyll is what makes plants green, which that's pretty cool. And the other thing that chloroplasts do, which is super, super cool, is they're the site for photosynthesis, yeah? Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of photosynthesis before, but photosynthesis is the process by which plants take carbon dioxide and they produce oxygen for us to breathe. Now, I should say that they're not just producing oxygen for us to breathe. Photosynthesis is where plants take carbon dioxide, sunlight, and water, and they produce glucose. Now, you know what glucose is, it's sugar, and that's an energy form that, you know, even we eat in our lives, and glucose is an energy form for our plants, yeah? And it just happens that there's the byproduct of oxygen that we need to breathe, which they produce. So, you know, that's a little bit of a fun fact there. Now, if we move on to our animal cell just has a cell membrane. It doesn't have a big, thick cell wall like our plant cell. They both have got nucleuses. We can see that because they're both eukaryotic cells, yeah? And our nucleus, that's where our genetic information is kept. There's another structure which is common to both our animal and our plant cells, and it's called the endoplasmic reticulum. Another little tricky word to say. Now, our endoplasmic reticulum, there's actually two types. There's smooth and there's rough. We also abbreviate endoplasmic reticulum to ER. So our smooth ER has the function of breaking down carbohydrates, storing calcium, and producing lipids. Now, when our endoplasmic reticulum, when we call it rough ER, it's because the ribosomes have attached to the ER, and that's what makes it rough. There's all these little bumps along it. Now, the purpose of our rough ER, so that's the one that's got the ribosomes on it, is to secrete proteins. Now, for example, if our cell was a pancreatic cell, so a cell found in our pancreas, it would be producing insulin in the smooth endoplasmic reticulum and then releasing the insulin through the rough endoplasmic reticulum. So it's pretty cool. All of our cells in our body have all these special functions which helps us do everything that we can do. Next, we have our Golgi apparatus, and this allows for the production, modification, and the synthesis of a different variety of cell products. We also have our lysosome, and our lysosome is a digestive protein which helps to break stuff down. Now, remember when I was talking about how plants produce glucose and the glucose is energy? Yeah, well, just like that, our mitochondria, okay, that is what produces our energy. And it produces our energy in this form called ATP. Okay, and that allows us to use that energy for different processes right across our body. And finally, the last thing that our animal cells have, and this one's really unique, is it has this thing called a flagella, and this looks like a little bit of a tail off of our cell. And our flagella allows for motility. So in this episode of Miss Hobbs Teaches Biology, we've talked about what it means to be unicellular and what it means to be multicellular. And from that, we have looked at prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells, and within eukaryotic cells, animal and plant cells. So you should know what all of these terms mean, and you should be able to list the key organelles within our eukaryotic cells, alongside distinguish that it's the absence of the membrane-bound organelles and the absence of the nucleus in our prokaryotic cells, which make them prokaryotic and not eukaryotic. Thanks for watching this episode of Miss Hobbs Teaches Biology. If this episode helped you out, make sure to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Thanks for watching this episode. Make sure that you download your free worksheet which accompanies this video on Teachers Pay Teachers. Please comment down below if you would like another video in this series and what type of video you would like. Thanks for watching.